I was born and raised in Sacramento, California. And when I was a young boy there in Sacramento, I did a couple things. You know, I played baseball like normal boys, and I rode my BMX bicycle until I was in the sixth grade. And when I was in the sixth grade, something happened that changed my life forever. In my elementary school, we live in a pretty rough neighborhood there in Sacramento, so I usually would get picked up every day from school from my mother and my father. But this day was not a normal day. I got picked up in a U-Haul trailer truck. I didn't realize it at the time, but all our belongings were thrown in the back of it. And my dad was honking the horn, telling me to get in. And I didn't realize it, but we had lost our home. I didn't realize it that he got so severely hooked on drugs that we didn't have a place to live. I'll never forget going on the freeway there and asking my dad, "Where are we going?" And he says, "I don't know." We ended up pulling off the side of the road. We went into a motel where I thought we would stay the night, and I didn't realize we'd stay 2 years. If matters couldn't get worse, my mother, who I loved more than anything, I was a mama's boy, she got sick with a very rare blood disease called scleroderma. My life was shattered. So I started running the streets. I started living wild. When I was in junior high, I was in the 8th grade. I missed so many days of school. I got kicked out of school. I'll never forget the time when I went to, one day I went to class as an 8th grade boy because I was just missing school. I was living wild. I didn't have that leadership in the home, and I was looking up to my oldest brother. And there was a problem because if my oldest brother would have been a football player, I'd have picked up a football. If he'd have been a musician, I'd have picked up a guitar. He was a gang member. And he was not an ordinary gang member. He was a high-ranking prison gang member. And so I wanted to be like him. He would send me letters from the penitentiary. I'd treat them like love letters. He would tell me it's going to be okay, stay strong, don't show any emotion, don't show any fear. And so I tried to model that. When I was 14 years old, I started to lift weights, not to feel good, not to look good, not to play any sports. I wanted to lift weights for one reason. I wanted to get my back arms so big, when I hit you, you'd feel my pain. I had a lot of it. I went to my junior high and I missed so many days of school. They came to me one afternoon in the 8th grade, surrounded by police officers and the officials there, the principal. They put me in a back room and said, "Joey, there's going to be a very important meeting tomorrow. You need to be there, but you need to bring your parents. We need your mother and your father to go with you." The morning I went to the meeting, I was the only one that did. My mom or daddy didn't even show up to represent me. And I'll never forget the meeting because they looked at me and they said, "You got two options. You can go to a group home or you can go to an alternative school where there are more kids that are like you." And I went to that home for a short period of time where I just dropped out. I had about a 9th grade education. I never liked going around my family because when I did at one time, my daddy was a big man, 6'3", 300-pound man, big strong man. Watched him turn into a 150-pound drug addict, stealing my stuff so he can get his fix. My mother, who was a sweet lady but was just physically and mentally not able to take care of us, she became very sick. And I realized that early that life was pain and pain is life, and I just better deal with it. And that time I started to say a prayer, Eric, and my prayer was like this: "God, please do something in my family. Don't let my dad be strung out on those drugs, and don't let my mother be sick and die." I said that prayer for 12 long years. That prayer felt like it was bouncing off the ceiling, felt like God wasn't home. He wasn't listening, or he just didn't care. Years would go by. I would go in and out of jail. That was part of my lifestyle. Like my oldest brother, I thought that my end of my life would be in an institution like him. I thought that would be my Super Bowl. And before I was 18, I was in and out of the youth authority. I was in and out of jail. I had made a mess of my life. The only productive thing I like to do is I like to lift weights. I'll never forget it because here I am, I'm big and strong. You know, I like to lift weights. I'm physical, big on the outside, but I'm a little 11-year-old boy on the inside, without a father, without any hope, without any identity. And I had made a mess of my life. And every single night I'd go home, wherever I'd be, on a jail cell or in my own bed, I'd cry myself to sleep because of the pain that was in my life. I'm 22 years old. The only thing I like to do is I like to lift weights. And I got invited to a gym of all places there in Sacramento, California. And after I went to this gym, I didn't realize it was a Christian gym. It was the Lord's gym. And when I went to this gym, they showed me love and they said, "You can come here anytime you want, work out, you're VIP, we'd like you to come." So I started to go and work out at this gym, and I'll never forget it because the man that started that gym, he came to me one afternoon, he says, "Joey, You look pretty violent on the outside, but I see how you talk to those kids, telling them not to live that lifestyle you live. Why don't you come to church with us? Now, I've never been to church in my life. I wasn't raised in church. I had no religious background. I had no affiliation with anything. I wasn't practicing anything. And he says, why don't you come to church with us? And out of respect for him, because he built a relationship with me, I says, okay, I'll go. And May 18th, 1997, I went to church for the first time. And that night he gave an invitation, not to receive a religion, but a person named Jesus. I didn't even know what it meant. My heart was racing. I knew I had to do something, so I raised my hand. I walked forward that night, what seemed to be miles, and I gave my life to a person named Jesus, and I was forever changed. I went home, I called my mom and dad, and I said, you guys got to come to church with me. Jesus has changed my life. And that next Sunday morning, I went to church again, and I wasn't alone. I was with my mom and my dad, and my dad was very, very strung out on the drugs, but he was there. My mother was very ill at that time, very severely sick, but she was there. And I thank God for the man because he gave another invitation. And I watched my mother raise her hand, and I watched my father raise his hand. I raised my hand because, I did a lot of bad things, wanted to make sure I was good. And we walked down that aisle like a family for the first time in 12 years. And when my daddy walked forward, the power of God touched him in such a special way that it instantly delivered him and set him free.